Have you ever noticed that the more you try to be seen, the more they ignore you? But the moment you vanish, disappear without warning or explanation, something strange happens. They start thinking about you. The absence that once looked like weakness becomes a constant presence in the mind of the one who underestimated you. It's not magic, it's psychology, it's wounded ego, it's lost control. And that's why the more you disappear, the more they want you. But they'll never admit it. This video is a punch of reality. Here you'll understand why the right kind of silence is louder than 1,000 words, how to mess with someone's mind without saying a thing, and most importantly, how to emotionally detach from someone who treated you like an option. They'll pretend they don't feel anything. They'll post more, go out more, exaggerate their fake happiness, but deep down they're breaking. Because when control slips away, the ego collapses, and your absence, quiet, firm, unexpected, becomes the wound that hurts the most. You'll discover Stoic detachment strategies, how to turn predictability into emotional scarcity, and how to stop being a forgettable memory and become a presence that burns. We'll explore how your new version, calmer, more selective, deeply unsettles those who thought they knew you. And the best part? You won't need to beg or seek revenge. You'll just do what they least expect, nothing. And that nothing becomes everything. Because the one who ignores you today will one day feel the pain of no longer being able to reach you. If you've ever felt invisible from giving too much of yourself, this video is for you. Get ready to flip the script in silence and leave marks they'll never erase. Some people only realize the value of something when it's gone. Others only wake up when silence becomes deafening. Strange, isn't it? But that's exactly how the invisible effect begins. You don't yell. You don't argue. You just vanish. And suddenly, what was once ignored becomes a mystery. When you're always there, always available, always present, the other person gets used to it. They start to see you as part of the background, like a clock on the wall, useful but invisible. Predictability kills attraction. And without realizing it, you start losing value. Because what's guaranteed is rarely cherished. But when you begin to distance yourself, no drama, no hints, no games, something shifts. The absence creates discomfort. The other person's routine starts to shake. And in that emptiness, your presence starts to appear. The paradox is real. By disappearing, you become visible. The first reaction of someone who underestimated you is pride. A forced laugh, a fake calm, as if nothing happened. But inside, the mind starts racing. Did something happen? Why now? And did they finally get tired of me? Obsession is born from those unanswered questions. Silence is a powerful weapon because it breaks the pattern. It cuts the emotional script. They used to know exactly how you'd react. Now, they don't even know if you'll respond. And what do humans hate most? Losing control of the story. That's what silence delivers. Want to know how to make someone miss you without chasing them? Simple. Stop explaining. Stop justifying everything. Don't block, don't delete, don't complain. Just withdraw. Withdraw your energy, your attention, your constant presence. Well-managed absence makes noise. This kind of distancing isn't revenge, it's emotional strategy. One of the most effective Stoic tools for detachment. You stop trying to convince and start choosing yourself. You don't disappear out of immaturity. You disappear because you're done giving to someone who only sees your worth after you're gone. When someone's used to having you there all the time, your absence causes internal noise, a quiet disturbance that only they can hear. It slowly grows into urgency. That's when the cycle starts. You don't chase, but you become a fixed thought, without even trying. And the strangest part? You don't need to do anything. No texts, no provocations, no signals. Just not being there anymore in the space you once filled is enough to stir discomfort. That unexpected absence becomes a constant emotional presence. Obsession doesn't start when you're around. It starts when you walk away in silence. No warning, no arguing, no final explanation. When they realize they've lost something, but can't define what. That void fuels desire. That disappearance is magnetic. The silence that attracts isn't filled with rage or resentment. It's built on peace, on certainty, on inner strength. When you go quiet, But your silence speaks louder than any message. When you leave, and yet your absence takes up more space than your presence ever did. People who constantly chase attention don't understand this power. They think the only way to have an impact is by speaking, insisting, explaining. But the human mind works differently. The less it knows, the more it thinks. And overthinking about someone is the first step toward desire. Smart absence is like a scent left in the air. You're already gone, but the memory remains. And doubt begins to eat away. Will they come back? Did they forget me? Did they find someone better? No answers, just silence. And that silence becomes addictive. Those who keep chasing are rarely remembered with longing. They're remembered with relief, because forced presence is exhausting. But those who know how to disappear at the right moment become the memory that never fades. The unanswered question. That's why the more you disappear, the more they search for you. You don't need to prove anything, not even explain why you left. A person's true value shows when absence causes more impact than presence. And that's when the quietest and most effective game of your life begins. Now tell me, have you noticed how after you walked away they started watching you again, even without saying a word? That's just the beginning. What comes next is even more revealing. Sometimes what shakes someone the most isn't a scream, it's silence. The right silence at the right time is like a siren no one hears, but it echoes directly in the mind of the one who underestimated you. A growing void, a muted sound that torments. That's where the collapse begins. At first they fake normalcy. They smile, post, carry on as if nothing has changed, but inside, something breaks. The ego, used to being in control, starts losing grip. And when the ego doesn't understand what's happening, it creates 1,000 theories to protect itself. Your absence becomes a riddle, no clues, no explanations, and that's unbearable for someone who thought they had you in their hands. Suddenly the logic falls apart. Why now? Did they mean it? Are they okay without me? These questions are poison to the ego. The most interesting part, it all happens in silence. They don't admit it, they don't text, they don't tell anyone, but their mind works overtime trying to understand. It starts as a subtle discomfort and grows until it consumes everything, becoming obsession. This is the essence of the power of strategic absence. You say nothing, but you become the most persistent thought. Their mind replays memories, conversations, gestures. Everything they ignored before now shines, but too late, because you're no longer there to confirm any of it. The one who underestimated you begins to show signs, subtle but clear. They're online at the same times you used to be. They watch your stories. They ask mutual friends just by chance. But they'll never say they miss you. Pride won't allow it. The ego prefers to lie, even while crumbling. The truth is, when the ego loses control, it doesn't apologize. It tries to restore order by pretending it's still in charge, but it's not. Because you're no longer a predictable presence. You've become an impactful absence, a mystery that keeps them awake at night. You don't need drama to provoke regret. Silence, when used wisely, is stronger than any argument. It disarms the ego because it gives it nothing to hold on to. And without support, they fall. And when they fall, the mind finally does what it always avoided. It feels. Want to know how to trigger regret through silence? Give yourself peace, and give them confusion. Remove what was once guaranteed, not out of revenge, but out of emotional justice. When absence becomes coherence, it becomes a scar, not a game. Remember that song you only realize you love when it stops playing? That's you. Your presence was the background music of their life. But now, everything feels strange, too quiet. And in that silence, they start searching. Not for you, but for what they lost by not valuing you. The right kind of absence shows you no longer have anything to prove. Your silence isn't empty, it's a decision. And that decision breaks through any defense. Even the most emotionally armored person starts showing cracks. I don't care turns into insomnia. Whatever becomes secret searching. Little by little, absence chips away at their certainties. What once felt like control is now chaos. and no one likes losing control, especially those who felt secure in your presence. Now they're lost, and the compass they used to follow was you. The ego may pretend it doesn't care. It may post pictures, go out with others, do everything to provoke you, but that's just noise, an attempt to drown out the silence left after you walked away. Because deep down they know, it's not you who's missing anymore, it's them. And the strangest thing, they'll even try to replace you, fill the time, pack their schedule, but nothing satisfies. Because the issue isn't your physical absence, it's your emotional absence, and that, no distraction fixes, no new person heals, it only makes it worse. This absence that bothers them today will become regret tomorrow. But by then, it'll be too late. Because anyone who ignores you in the noise doesn't deserve to have you in the silence. And once you discover the power of that, you'll never give your worth away again. And once all of this sets in, the game changes. But you don't need to make a single move. The movement now comes from the other side, and it's filled with doubt, fear, and contradictions. And it's in that moment that something even more surprising begins. In the beginning, no one fears someone who's always available. Predictability dulls impact, but when you begin to change, something shifts in them too. Your absence, once seen as neediness or drama, now becomes a sign of strength, and that strength starts to create fear. Fear of your new version. Before they knew exactly what to expect from you. How you'd react when you'd reply, how you'd try to fix things. But now you've pulled away, no warning, no justification. You just stepped back. And in that new silence, something unexpected was born. Unpredictability. Predictable presence is comfortable, but it doesn't earn respect. It's like a light left on all the time, useful but forgotten. Now that you've removed yourself, not out of anger but clarity, you trigger the opposite, tension. Because now no one knows what you think, and what isn't understood scares people. The one who had free access, who treated you like a backup plan, now realizes they lost the privilege. And the more they try to guess why you're gone, the more they realize they're no longer at the center of your world. Pride hurts, but what truly wounds is emotional emptiness. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying to be understood. That's when your selective presence was born. You didn't disappear. You simply started choosing where and with whom to be. And that choice, silent and firm, makes the other person feel rejected, even without words. And the most curious part, even from a distance, you have more impact than when you were near. Because now your absence has weight. It's noticed, it's felt, it's talked about. And every time they think of you, they feel the discomfort of no longer knowing who you are. The truth is, no one respects someone who's always predictable, who always gives in, who always comes back. Respect is born when you show you can walk away without notice and stay well, when you can cut emotional access without yelling, when you can be silent without disappearing from yourself. Want to know how to become unforgettable by disappearing? Easy. Break the pattern. Be the exception. Step out of your usual role. When they expect drama, give peace. When they expect desperation, give space. When they expect a reaction, give silence. And watch their insecurity unfold. The fear of your new version doesn't come from your anger. It comes from your calm, from your peace in no longer being available. And from the clarity you now show, even in silence, that you won't settle for crumbs anymore. That disarms, that becomes a mirror. And no one likes seeing themselves small. Maybe you haven't changed that much. You just stopped begging. You stopped asking for a seat. And that subtle shift one is the most powerful one because it needs no announcement, no posts, no hints. It shows in the silence, in the distance, in the peace you now carry. The respect that was once denied is now being born, not through screaming, but through distance, through the absence that weighs, through the new posture you adopted without having to say a word. And that's what shakes the one who thought they had you all figured out. From here on, there's nothing left to prove. Because whoever feels your absence as a loss has already recognized your value. Even if they don't say it, even if they try to hide it, the effect has begun, and there's no turning it off. Your new version is already in motion. But the most interesting part? This is only the beginning, because the stronger you become, the deeper the impact. And what comes next will shake everything they thought they had under control. The human mind has a strange flaw. It can't stand a vacuum. Where there are no answers, it invents them. Where there's no certainty, it fills in the blanks. And it's exactly in that emptiness that obsession begins, because your silence has become a mystery they can't solve. You stopped dropping hints. You no longer react like you used to, and that throws off someone who relied on your emotional predictability. Before, all it took was a cold message, a strategic disappearance, a little emotional game. And there you were, trying to fix everything. But now, nothing. This constant absence became something strange, a silent presence, a weight that lingers. And now the other person starts to idealize you, to imagine you as better than they remember, to paint you in colors that may never have existed, because the brain needs to make sense of it, even if it has to invent it. You became a riddle, and riddles fascinate. What was once ordinary is now rare. What was dismissed now seems essential. What was certain has turned into doubt. And in that space, their mind starts to loop, trying to fill in what you've decided never to say. The kind of absence that drives someone mad doesn't scream, it watches. And the simple act of not replying becomes a provocation. Not reading the message becomes a show of power. Not offering explanations becomes a quiet declaration that something has changed. And those who crave control can't handle that kind of silence. Want a practical example? Imagine they send you a message saying, "Hey, is everything okay?" And you, who used to answer within minutes, now take days or never respond at all. It's not contempt, it's intentional silence. Because not everything deserves a reply, and to the ego that's unbearable. The ego wants a reaction. Any reaction, even a "don't talk to me anymore" would be better than emptiness. But you don't give it, and with no reaction they spiral. They try to provoke you, post indirect messages, disappear for a while, block you and unblock you, all to get your attention. But nothing works. You became unpredictable. And the power of emotional unpredictability lies in breaking the expected script. You break the pattern, and that shatters their entire emotional strategy. Not knowing what to expect, they start to expect everything, and that becomes obsession. The person who once ignored you now can't stop thinking about you, and not because you said anything, but because you stopped saying anything. That silence turns into noise, into anxiety, into that uncomfortable question, did I lose them for good? And no answer comes, just more silence. A silence no longer seen as weakness, but as mysterious strength. A kind of control the other person doesn't understand, but deeply feels. And the more they feel it, the more they react. And the more they react, and the more you affect them without doing a thing. Want to know how to turn someone's mind upside down without saying a word? Become rare, become absent. Be calm where there once was desperation. Don't react where you once begged. Don't explain where you used to justify everything. Just change, quietly, and they'll notice, in the worst way. This kind of silence is like a dark mirror. The other person looks and only sees themselves. Their mistakes, their projections, their insecurities. When you stop being the easy answer, you become the hard question, the uncomfortable memory, the emotional ghost. That's why, even from afar, you become the center of attention. Not because you did anything grand, but because your absence became impact. And impact, when it comes from silence, is stronger than any speech. It lingers, it repeats, and becomes obsessive presence. But now it's not you who's wearing out, it's them. They're the one trying to make sense of everything, to explain, to decode. And that eats away inside, because doubt is a slow poison. And you, steady, calm, untouchable, have become the antidote they no longer have access to. But here's the most interesting part. At this stage, something even deeper begins to happen. What once was just discomfort now turns into longing, and longing, when met with silence, turns into regret. There comes a moment when reality hits, and when it does, and it's too late, they realize you're really gone. This isn't a temporary absence, it's not a tactic, it's a decision. It's the end of the line, and that silence, and once underestimated, has now become the strongest answer you could give. At first, their attempts to reach out still carry arrogance, that old posture, I'll call and they'll come back. But you didn't. Later, the tone shifts. Just wanted to check on you. But you didn't reply. And that's when the collapse began. Silent, slow, real. This kind of withdrawal doesn't slam doors, doesn't leave a note, it just happens. One day they wake up and realize you're not there anymore. No more texts, no more explanations, no more energy to offer. And that absence, once ignored, has now become a void. That absence hurts because it's permanent, because they finally understand you didn't leave in anger. You left in peace, in clarity. Like someone who finally chose themselves. And that hurts more than any argument, because it shows you no longer need to be there, not even to hate, not even to love. Want to know how to make someone regret losing you in silence? Offer absence as an answer. Offer silence as a choice, not as punishment, but as freedom. That's when the pain cuts deepest, because there's no fight, no confrontation. Just one quiet truth: you're not coming back. The messages grow fewer. Then come the awkward silences, the voice notes that end with, "Just wanted to say that," even if you don't reply. And with each failed attempt, they realize they've lost you. And not because of something recent, but because they never valued you when they had the chance. The scar left by absence isn't visible. But those who feel it, know. It's that quiet ache that hits when they see a photo, hear a song, or remember how you always came back, until you didn't. And then, there's nothing left to do, but accept the loss. The one who expected your reaction now faces your silence. The one who counted on your insecurity now faces your peace. The one who mocked your presence now secretly begs for your return. But there is no return, because the silence already did what it needed to do. It set you free. You didn't walk away out of pride. You walked away out of exhaustion, out of self-respect, out of clarity. And that's the power of walking away with dignity. You don't need to prove you were hurt. You simply show that you're no longer there, and your absence alone tells the entire story. While they collapse trying to understand, you've moved to another state, not emotionally vulnerable, but emotionally protected, because now silence has become your shield, and within that shield, your freedom was born. The freedom to no longer respond to what no longer makes sense. Some people think regret needs an audience, but real regret happens in the dark, in silence, away from the eyes. When longing builds up and finds no path, when pride breaks down and there's no one left on the other side. And don't mistake this for coldness. This is self-respect. It's finally understanding that the place where you used to pour your energy was never worthy of it. And when that realization comes from within, everything changes. You stop accepting any return that doesn't come with truth. Now it's the other person walking in circles, looking for answers that won't come, feeling the emptiness where there used to be certainty. And that emptiness, with time, turns into pain. A pain that teaches, a pain that doesn't fade easily, because you became absent to but an unforgettable one. And as time goes by, the impact only grows, because absence doesn't dissolve, it settles. And even if they deny it, they feel it. And when that pain becomes part of the routine, that's when an even deeper transformation begins. In the beginning, silence feels scary. It feels like emptiness, abandonment, punishment. But with time, it changes. One day, you realize you no longer miss what once consumed you. And then, without warning, you begin to enjoy your own company. That's when the invisible rebirth begins. You wake up without rushing to respond to anyone. You walk without seeking approval. You pick up a book, sip your coffee, take a deep breath. Silence no longer weighs you down. It comforts you. It's not the absence of noise anymore, it's the presence of peace, your own presence finally noticed by you. What used to be dependence is now discovery. A new joy in being alone. And that joy doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from maturity. Because being alone, truly alone, isn't loneliness, it's freedom. The freedom to choose where your energy goes, and more importantly, where it doesn't go anymore. The silence that strengthens is made of small gestures. You trade long messages for calm thoughts. You replace anxiety with routine. You let go of the addiction to replies and find pleasure in not needing to say anything. It's a silence that doesn't demand, doesn't wait, doesn't justify itself. You don't post to prove you're fine. You don't hint that you've moved on. You simply live. You read more, sleep better. Make simple choices that once seemed impossible, saying no without guilt, turning off your phone without fear, going out without explaining anything to anyone. Want a practical example? Start rereading a book that's been sitting on the shelf, one you began but never finished. Pick up Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, or The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Read one chapter a day. That alone will change how you breathe. These small victories aren't seen by anyone, but inside you they carry enormous weight. When you go an entire day without thinking about the one who hurt you, that's a win. When you choose what to eat without asking anyone's opinion, that's a win. Each decision becomes liberation. It's a Stoic emotional rebuild, without applause, without spectators. A lonely process, but a sacred one. No one sees when you choose not to respond to a provocation. No one applauds when you swallow your pride and protect your peace. But every one of those moments rebuilds you. You start to realize you no longer need to be seen to feel whole. That's where respect begins, when you stop needing to prove you've changed, and simply change. The silent transformation is the most powerful, because it's real, because it doesn't need an audience. From the outside, it may look like nothing has changed, but inside, you're no longer the same. What once threw you off balance now goes unnoticed. What once hurt is now wisdom. What once held you back is now just memory, a memory you no longer need to relive. This healing isn't a miracle. It's a construction, one step at a time. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you cry, but you keep going. Because you've realized that healing in silence is safer, it's deeper, it's more real. And when healing is real, it changes the way you see the world. You start choosing better, people, places, conversations. You begin to realize you don't need much, just yourself. And that in truth you never needed the other as much as you thought. It was just fear of looking within. Now, it's the courage to stay. This rebirth has no soundtrack, no dramatic scene, but it has peace, it has order, it has strength. It's invisible to those who only look from the outside, but intense for those who feel it from within. And that silent intensity is what makes you unshakable. As you rebuild, something changes in the one who lost you, because your absence, once mistaken for pride, is now felt as real loss. But now, it's too late. Some losses don't make noise. They just happen. No announcement, no door slamming, no goodbye message. And that's exactly why they hurt more. You didn't beg to stay, you simply stood up quietly and decided it was enough. And that was what cut the deepest. The other person only realized it later, when they searched and didn't find you, when they tried to provoke you and got no reaction, when they wanted to get to you and saw you were no longer there. That's when it hit. The absence had no end date. It wasn't a pause, it was the end. A silent end. That silence, so underestimated at first, became the wound that hurts the most. Because there's nothing to heal, no stitches to sew, just an open space. And every time they think of you, they feel the void of no longer having access. The echo of the silence you left behind never stops ringing. The kind of absence that leaves a mark doesn't come from anger. It comes from clarity. You didn't need to justify yourself. You didn't need to prove you were right. You just chose to leave, with dignity, with maturity. And that calm, that firmness, became the cruelest memory for someone who had you and didn't value you. The mind tries to go back, recall moments, build excuses, craft justifications, but it's no use. The access is gone. The presence that once was constant is now memory. And memory can't be touched, only felt. And that feeling over time turns into remorse. You didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't make a scene, and for that very reason, you remained, in their mind, in their guilt, in their silence. Because when someone leaves shouting, it's easy to place the blame on them. But when someone leaves in silence, the other is forced to look at themselves, and they don't always like what they see. Now it's too late, because you've rebuilt, you've healed, you've created a life where that person no longer fits, And the more time passes, the clearer your decision becomes, because their regret grows and you don't need to do anything at all. When it's too late to return, even pride has to bend. But by then, there is no return. Respect only comes when access ends, when there's no longer a chance to reconnect, because the one who left isn't waiting. They're living, at peace, whole again. You've become a permanent absence, not out of revenge, but out of protection, because you realized you can't heal what keeps hurting you. And that decision became your greatest strength. Today, the one who ignored you might still be smiling, but one day, they'll feel the pain of no longer being able to reach you. And that pain will be slow, constant, irreversible, because the silence that turns into regret never ends. It echoes, it weighs, it screams where once there was certainty. And that shattered certainty becomes the scar that never fades. So never forget, those who didn't value you when you were there will idealize you when you're no longer an option. Not because you were perfect, but because your absence proved what your presence always screamed, and no one wanted to hear. Now you understand what they'll never admit, that your absence was what marked them the most. Not because you shouted, but because you were quiet, because you left without warning, without a scene, and never came back. And that's what haunts them, knowing they lost you in silence. You didn't beg, didn't explain, you just chose yourself. And that choice made in silence became the scar that never disappears. Today, the one who once ignored you probably watches you without saying a word, pretends not to care, but replays every moment with you, because deep down, they know they lost. And worse, they lost you in a way that can never be undone. And you? Now you know your worth. You've learned that chasing never earns respect. Disappearing when your presence is no longer seen does. Leaving with peace, not anger, does. Letting silence speak for you does. But tell me something, have you ever been that silent scar in someone's life? Or are you still trying to be heard by someone who never really listened? If this video spoke to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here you'll keep learning how to protect yourself, rebuild to never fade for anyone again. And now write just one word in the comments, unforgettable. Because that's exactly what you become when you learn how to disappear the right way.